Now, okay. Hi, it's Robert Dunlop here. I'm the co-founder of wellnessheroes.com, and we're launching Wellness Heroes TV here at the Total Health Show in Toronto. And we have the honor and privilege to speak with Jeffrey Smith. Now, he's written a fabulous book he's going to tell us about. This is something I've studied a little bit about as a licensed professional engineer in Ontario. I know a bit about this, but this is the man. And our audience is your average person who wants to know about truth in wellness. So, Jeffrey, you've recently written a book. Can you tell us about the book? And secondly, what motivated you to write that book?
Well, actually, Seeds of Deception wasn't so recent, but it's still actually selling all over the world and being translated in different languages. When I saw how much corruption there was behind the approvals of genetically modified foods in the United States and Canada, and I saw, for example, in Canada, how Health Canada workers who testified before the Senate that they were being offered a bribe by Monsanto to approve their genetically modified bovine growth hormone, the documents were stolen from a locked file cabinet. They were actually, one, Shiv Chopra was actually sent away for a week without pay because he testified before the Senate.
Wow.
In the United States,
how did Shiv fit into that equation? Why, can you just expand on that for our listeners who might not know Shiv?
Okay, Shiv was, he worked at Health Canada, and he realized that they were going to approve bovine growth.
Good morning, everyone. On the south stage.
Excuse me, everyone. We're at a trade show here, so
We're not picking it up.
it's going to be some interruptions.
Okay, Shiv Chopra was aware that Health Canada was about to approve genetically engineered bovine growth hormone without any studies, without any review of studies, just because it happened to be approved in the US. So he raised a fist, raised trouble, and turns out they allowed him and a team to review the approval of bovine growth hormone as had been done in the US, and they found it completely a ridiculous review, where they basically took at face value the assumptions and statements by industry, ignored serious health hazards, and basically put at risk the entire population of the country and the animals. So fortunately, because of his work and others, the bovine growth hormone has been banned in Canada as well as most other parts of the world, but not in the US.
So, thanks everybody.
No, not quite.
Let me know when you're ready.
All right. So, all right, go ahead.
Hold on a second, do I have my, yeah, okay. I
Can you
think
test
I
the
have,
mic, please?
testing.
Testing.
2 inches. Try again.
Testing.
One more.
Want
One more
that?
mic check.
You want that off? I can help you out. I'll hold this.
Thanks. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm gonna open on the book. So just start talking and I will zoom down. Okay. Okay, I'm rolling.
Okay, we're here with Wellness Heroes TV, wellnessheroes.tv, and we're launching our channel here to your average person that wants to know about truth and wellness. Can you zoom in on that too? Basically, we have the honor here of being able to interview Jeffrey Smith, and we're talking about his latest book here. Well, sorry, this is not your latest, but this is your latest. I'm getting educated in this area. Genetic roulette, the documented health risks of genetically engineered foods. Sterility, infant mortality, tongue twisters here this morning, allergies, organ defects, childhood diseases, speech impediments perhaps. Basically, I'd like you to talk about this book, and then I'd like you to contrast it with the people that say, you know, GMO is good because it allows our growing population of so many billions to get more food per square inch, and therefore it feeds more people, and it's more, let's say, sustainable for... Can we talk and compare and contrast this book and your ideas with that other school of thought?
Sure.
Thanks for taking the time, Jeffrey. Sorry, it's all yours.
Rodents that were fed genetically modified soy had changes in their testicles, uterus, ovaries, and the DNA of their embryo offspring. They had infant mortality as much as 5 times higher. The infants were often smaller and were often sterile. By the 3rd generation of hamsters fed GM soy, most lost the ability to have babies, and some had hair growing in their mouths. Rats fed genetically modified tomatoes had stomach lesions. Rats fed genetically modified potatoes had potentially precancerous cell growth, smaller brains, livers, and testicles, partial atrophy of the liver, and a damaged immune system.
So the message is to your average consumer, this stuff messes you up.
The average consumer would say, what? That's in my food? And you see, the biotech industry, when they discover that someone has found these adverse findings, they sometimes arrange for that person to be fired from their jobs, or silenced with threats of a lawsuit, or denied funding for further research, or they threaten to sue them because they're using the seeds without patent permission. So we have a situation where the industry research is basically tobacco science. It's rigged to avoid finding problems. The regulators are largely staffed by the people from the companies, or have links to the companies with the products that they're trying to regulate. Those independent scientists that discover problems are jumped upon and attacked. But we've compiled all the different dangers into the book, and it provides irrefutable, overwhelming evidence that GMOs are unsafe. Now, the biotech industry claims it's necessary to feed the world, but the experts disagree. In fact, the most comprehensive...
When you say the experts, you're talking about the health experts?
I'm talking about the experts at feeding the world.
Experts at feed... So can you cite a few examples?
All right. The Union of Concerned Scientists did a comprehensive study showing that GMOs actually do not increase yield, they reduce yield on average. But the most comprehensive study of agriculture and feeding the world was done by was sponsored by more than 60 countries and done by more than 400 scientists, called the ISTAT report, and they said the current generation of GMOs have nothing to offer to feed the hungry world or eradicate poverty. So it's basically public relations.
Now, there's a movie that I really enjoyed called Michael Clayton by George Clooney.
Right.
Now, you wrote your first book in 2003, and the book was called?
Seeds of Deception.
And do you think there's any parallels to your first book and that movie?
Oh yeah, the book shows that industry insiders knew one thing and the public was told something else. And that was happening not only in the corporations, but even in the government. Documents made public from a lawsuit in 1999 showed that the scientists at the FDA were concerned about GMOs and actually...
Again.
Okay, we're rolling.
Okay, so Jeffrey, you wrote your best-selling book in the world in 2003 on the GMO, and what was it called again for our audience?
Seeds of Deception.
Right. Now that book is in how many countries?
It's in about 15 countries in about 10 or 11 languages.
Fantastic. So basically, the question is, there is a movie that I believe Tony Gilroy, worked on, with George Clooney starred in, called Michael Clayton. And it came out a few years ago. I loved the movie. How would you compare your work to, in the book of Seeds of Deception, to the actual movie Michael Clayton?
Well, Seeds of Deception is all about deception at the corporate level, at the government level, at the media level. How whenever there's truth that shows problems with GMOs, it's covered up. Even at the FDA, where 44,000 secret internal memos were made public in 1999, it showed that the overwhelming consensus among the scientists at the FDA was that GMOs were unsafe and could lead to allergies, toxins, new diseases, and nutritional problems. But the person in charge of policy was former Monsanto attorney, later Monsanto's vice president, completely ignored and denied the existence of those warnings, lied about them, and said, we know of no information that's showing that GMOs are different, and put it on the market. We also know that the research that was done to support the claims of safety was entirely rigged, and we have caught them red-handed. And we show, in fact, that there was a deadly epidemic in the 1980s, which was linked to a genetically modified food supplement, that Congress withheld that information, the FDA withheld that information from Congress when they reported on the epidemic soon after it happened.
So our slogan at wellnessheroes.tv is truth in wellness. How true? Can you comment on that as it pertains to that story?
Sorry to interrupt. We already asked that question.
Already asked it? Okay. So cut that. So how should we wrap up this piece, Vic?
Huh? I don't know. Maybe you can.
How would you like to
thank
wrap
very
this
much.
piece up?
There's- oh, you know, one question might be.
You want to lead into your latest book? Wrap it up with that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna wrap this. And when was that book written?
This was 2007.
This is your latest?
You could say genetic roulette.
Okay.
So go ahead.
So, Jeffrey, this genetic roulette, that is an amazing title. It looks like almost an encyclopedia. Why did you actually write this book?
Well, I was traveling around the world, at that point 25 countries, giving seeds of deception to world leaders. And I realized they don't have time to read these stories of